Jordan Rains here with the IDP 411 podcast. Just want to tell you guys today about our sponsor of the show, expandtheboxscore.com. Expandtheboxscore.com has premium NFL and college football stats. They're adaptable, they're affordable, there's all kinds of great stuff on there from the NFL to college football. It's great for people that are in the Devy leagues looking to get that edge over their league mates. So go check out expandtheboxscore.com, proud sponsor of the show. And now without further ado, on to the IDP 411.
What's up? This is Jared Gray, and with my co-host Jordan Rains with the IDP 411. We have the Dynasty Chef in the background. Going to be covering the AFC South. What's up, fella? How you doing?
Not much. Good morning. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. And, just adapting and being ready. It's hot down here in the South.
Yes, sir, it is. I'm in Missouri. It's been scorching the past few days, so I'm right there with you. But hey, IDP Army, hope you guys are well. Hope you guys are doing good during this time of general unrest in the world. Hope you are watching and learning and making wise decisions and having good conversations with all people you love. It's really important. But we're here today to talk about, something else that's kind of important, and that's football, and that's fantasy football, and that's IDP fantasy football, and that's what we do. So we're here for you guys. We're going to talk today about the AFC South, a very kind of like last week's division, a very IDP-rich division. And we're just going to go ahead and start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, probably the most IDP-rich team in the division. So, we got these middle linebackers. We know Joe Schobert and we know Myles Jack. They're both going to be, guys you're going to want on your teams this year. They have proven to be very valuable commodities in the past. Let's just start there. What are you expecting out of Joe Schobert as he makes this move, from the Browns down to Jacksonville, Jared? I mean, he had a great season, obviously, in 19. He had a great season in 18 as well. But he does find himself on a new team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last year, 103 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, 9 pass deflections, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. He was an all-pro player last year, and, for sure should have been. And him moving to a middle linebacker, I think only helps the Jaguars. I think he's a great player. It's funny. I talked about his coming out of college the other day in my Zach Bond video. He wasn't real flashy coming out of college at all, and I think he's just one of those guys who's a really good study of the playbook. And Jackson was falling in love with him, and some teams think that they can move on from a player, and I think Joe Schobert is so meticulous in what he does. I think it's actually a big loss for the Browns, and let's be real, the Browns can't afford to lose good players, and Jacksonville is going to get a stud in Joe Schobert, especially with Telvin Smith gone and all that stuff going on with him now. So they need some love in the linebacker field, and Myles Jack really hasn't produced what we thought he would do.
Yeah.
And I think this is just going to be a steal for them.
Yeah, Myles Jack definitely struggled last year when he did kind of get his opportunity, which was kind of disappointing. I know a lot of people, myself included, had high hopes for him, especially with Telvin Smith, not coming back. We found that out around this time last year. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Browns lost a really good guy. I have Joe Schobert in my top 10 for dynasty linebackers. I've got him in my top 5 for redraft linebackers. He's just produced, and you just kind of have to go with it, and you have to believe, and that's a productive spot down in Jacksonville. Myles Jack, like we kind of talked about him a little bit. I think he's more of a linebacker 2-3 this year. I think he might have a few good weeks, but we'll just have to see how the whole thing shakes out. But let's talk about Yannick Ngakoue quickly here. We still don't know exactly where he's going to play this season. He's expressed interest in playing elsewhere. But he's been really a model of consistency for your defensive line in IDP for the past several years. I'm going to read you his 19 stats, but you could honestly almost just put these into any year he's played football, and they're very similar. 41 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 17 quarterback hits, 6 pass deflections, an interception, 4 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. He's always been, disruptive. He had forced fumbles this year. He led the league, I believe, in 17 with 8 or 9 forced fumbles. So, an IDP, I mean, that's some money right there on top of the sacks. Another thing that I like to see about Yannick especially is he's active in engaging the passer besides just hitting him. He gets pass deflections, and that's something that I've kind of been studying a little bit in these defensive linemen is, okay, everybody we know we're going to want to get 8, 9, 10 sacks, but who are these guys who are doing the other stuff? And it's interesting because Joey Bosa, for instance, who's a guy we're all very high on and everybody's high on, in 5 years in the league, the guy's only got, I think he's got 4 pass deflections, 4 or 5. He almost does nothing in that department. I mean, he's just a rush the passer guy. He's not concerned if you're about to throw it up and he's not close. In an IDP fantasy football, Joey Bosa is still a stud, but you have to, keep in the back of your mind, maybe he doesn't offer you the kind of true upside that some of these other guys do. Like, we talked about him last week, Carlos Dunlap, who averages, 7, 8, 9 pass deflections a year. I mean, that's, an extra 20, 30 points in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. And a guy like Joey Bosa just isn't getting that for you. So, circling back to Yannick Ngakoue, I really enjoy the fact that he's an engaged player no matter where he is on the field. He'll rush somebody down. If the ball goes past him for a tackle, he will, fight to make the sack. And he's not scared to hop up and try and bat a pass down. And that's even playing some rotational stuff. So I really, I think he's going to have to play Jacksonville again this year. I mean, it was kind of like this last year. Do you think he's going to be able to get away? Or do you think he'll be an in-season?
I think for sure he's there for the season. I think he's a guy that they expect to move on eventually from. But I think he could have such a big year with Josh Allen next to him and the emergence of what Josh Allen will be on the other side. With Calais Campbell gone, I think you'll really see Yannick step. And, I mean, you can talk all you want to about moving on, but if Yannick gets paid there and he has a monster year and they're in contention again like they were a couple years ago, which they very easily could be, watch out, man. He could flip the script and sign a big contract with them. There's nothing to say that he wouldn't. He's one of the more experienced players. I'm not going to say an older player because he's still pretty young.
Yeah. But he's got a lot of good seasons under
and he's
his
so
belt.
consistent. Yeah, I mean, he's so consistent. And I personally think that he's going to have a monster year. I think he's going to be, upper 20s in the quarterback hurry aspect, quarterback hits. I think he'll be in mid-20s or so. I mean, we talked about the game last year that was in London. I mean, how many times quarterback hurries did he have in that game? 6 or 7?
He should have
hurries.
He should have had
Deshaun. So close.
Yeah, he came so close to sacking Deshaun Watson. Felt like every down in that game, but he just never did. So there's a couple of good pass rushers there. Let's talk about this guy, the rookie, real quick. Lavon Chason. He's also been added to the pass rush mix. He played outside linebacker at LSU. We have to assume, in my mind, it's going to be a lot like last year where it's, where they're going to try to get their 3 best guys on the field as much as they can together. But, with his ability to play some linebacker, and that's also what Josh Allen did as he transitioned to a defensive end. What do you think about Chason there? And what do you see him, maybe pushing into he had 6.5 sacks last year at LSU. Do you think he could have that this year in the NFL? There's a good place to start. Over under 6.5 sacks as a rookie for this guy.
Honestly, I love the number. Yeah, I think it's dead on. I think it's going to be a push. I think it's going to be 6. So I think it's a good push. I think with guys moving on, and I think you'll see Avery Williamson, not Avery Williamson. The other Williams brother really get pushed out in that aspect.
Yeah, Quincy.
Quincy, yeah. So, and I like Quincy. Don't get me wrong, and I love him from a small school. But Clavon Chase, I mean, you saw him. You've seen him live. You've seen tape of him. The kid's real, dude. And I'd love to see if he was a little bit bigger and stuff like that. But dude, you want to talk about a team that's young and hungry?
Yeah,
The Jacksonville Jaguars with Clavon Chase on,
they've been.
Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor, the experience. I like it. That's a good number. 6.5. I mean, I don't think he'll get 13 tackles for long. I mean, let's not get this twisted. But
yeah, I like 6.5. I think that was a solid number too and a good push. Let's talk about a guy that was a rookie there last year, Josh Allen. We love Josh Allen around here. We were pretty high on him coming into last year. We were a little concerned because of the Campbell Yannick thing, but he ended up producing. He finished easily as a top 20 guy in IDP 1-2-3 scoring. I don't have it right in front of me to pull up. Sorry about that, but I've got him ranked in my top 10 in redraft next year, and he's like top 7, I think, in my dynasty, 7 or 8. I mean, what you saw from Josh Allen last year, it was just you saw a guy that could get to the quarterback. You saw a guy that was long, that was bendy, that was fast. I mean, for a rookie, he was strong. I want to emphasize that. Like, for a rookie, he didn't look like he needed to bulk up. It didn't look like he was overmatched. He looked very capable. I mean, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, and Josh Allen were all three, your cream of the crop pass rushers from last season. I actually wrote an article about all three of them on Dynasty Nerds if anybody's interested in going to check that out. But, Josh Allen just 10.5 sacks. I mean, that was more than Nick Bosa. 23 quarterback hits. That was right behind Nick Bosa. I believe Nick Bosa ended up with, 25. 44 total tackles. He played under 700 snaps. That's pretty good. 11 tackles for loss. So Josh Allen to me is the future at pass rusher right now in Jacksonville. I like Yannick. I like him a little bit more. I've got Yannick at 13 going into the year right now. But Josh Allen's a guy that's just going to keep getting better and just keep developing, and they're just going to keep putting pieces around him. I mean, think about it. He played with Calais Campbell and Yannick last year. We lost Campbell, but now he gets to have Joe Schobert, in the background now. You already know, if you listen to our show, you watch us, we love Joe Schobert. We don't water it down around here. All Pro Joe is what we call him. And that's because he plays like an all pro player. He just got stuck on a team that was kind of garbage last year and didn't get recognized. His best game of the season also happened to be the game that Myles Garrett went bananas on Mason Rudolph, and just nobody paid attention to him, unfortunately, until it was too late. So Josh Allen, though, top 10 guy for me going into this season. You have any comments about Josh Allen before we talk about their safeties a little bit?
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and tell you that Josh Allen will be a top 10 in every category. Sacks, quarterback, or the following categories: sacks, quarterback hits, quarterback hurries, and tackles for loss.
I can see it. I could see it.
With Calais Campbell gone, I mean, he was already a top 10 guy with Calais Campbell and Yannick there, and he got less than 700 snaps. They obviously saw something where they moved on from Calais Campbell, who was a team captain, by the way. And I think you see, and I've always been high on Josh Allen, and I think that he's the future there, and they believe he's the future there. I think he gets close to 12 to 15 sacks. They got 10.5 as a rookie and under 700 snaps. I think he gets every bit of probably 30 quarterback hits, and he got 23 last year. So I think 30 is no problem. I think you might even see the upwards of 40. I know people are crazy about that, but it can easily happen. J.J. Watt's monster year a couple years ago, I think you can see that from Josh Allen. He's athletic. He's fast. He's got a great bend, like you talked about. We have a great video on him. I mean, he just shows all day long how good he really is. And I've got nothing but praise about the guy. Like I said, I got him in a steal in a draft, and I will not
ever
go away from talking about how good he is. I will never trade him. No, he's a guy that I think going to be the emergence.
Yep, agreed.
Of what you expect. I think he's and I'm really saying this, I think he's the next Danielle Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, this last year's pass rush class, I mean, I'm actually working on this. The article I wrote about those three guys I just mentioned for Dynasty Nerds, it's a two-parter because there's so many good defensive linemen and edge rushers last year, and I had to cut it off. Like I was going to add more guys, and I was like, this article is getting out of hand. Like I've got to focus on these important guys. But 2018, that draft class, or 2019, last year's draft class, that was the year to go get a defensive lineman. A lot like this year is the year to go get a wide receiver. So many guys, so deep. I mean, we're going to talk about a couple other guys on that list here. Jeffrey Simmons is another guy that had a good year. We'll get around to Ed Oliver. Clelin Ferrell, we'll bring him up eventually. But there's so many guys to pick from last year on your defensive line. So Josh Allen, one of the best. Maybe he might end up being the best in that class. So we'll see. Real quick, let's talk about the safety situation. We got Ronnie Harrison as the strong safety in Jacksonville, and then we got Jerrod Wilson as the free safety in Jacksonville. I played Ronnie Harrison a good bit last year. He got a little banged up toward around the middle of the season, but he still ended the year fairly well. He was getting pass deflections for me. He was getting high tackle numbers pretty much. Alabama guy, if I'm correct on that, if I remember right. But I like Ronnie Harrison. He's pretty young. They invested the draft capital on him. Let me look here real quick. He had 9 pass deflections last year in 14 games. So, that's pretty good. He had 2 sacks as well, 71 total tackles. He did get banged up a little bit, but to me, Ronnie Harrison's a guy, he's firmly in my top 25 defensive backs. And then Jerrod Wilson's a guy that I call him a streamer because, you'll usually be able to pick him up, drop him again. But I like Jerrod Wilson as a deep bench kind of guy just to use when I need to. I have him on a couple of my bigger dynasty teams. So what do you think about these 2 safeties, going forward?
Obviously, I don't think they're top tier guys. I don't think they're the cream of the crop guys, but I'm with you. They're guys I can grab third. I'm so deep in my safety groups, my 3 IDP or my 5 IDP leagues that I'm in. I just got into 2 more. I don't own any of them except for Ronnie Harrison in any of my other leagues. But if Ronnie Harrison can stay healthy, I think that he can be a top 25 guy or top 20 guy for sure.
Yeah, he definitely has that.
He has the ability, in my opinion.
Yep. All right, well, that's pretty much it for the Jags. Let's keep this ball rolling. Let's go to the Colts. The Colts, their defense was kind of putty a couple of years back, and then all of a sudden they started stepping up, and Frank Wright got there and started making some good decisions. They added my boy, one of my guys from last year, DeForest Buckner, to the team. He got added this year. That's a huge upgrade for the middle for them. They were rocking Danico Autry and some other guy I don't really remember. Now they have an all-pro player, a proven commodity, a guy that's been nothing but consistent. He puts up basically 55, 60 tackles a year, never misses a game. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. He also gets a few pass deflections here and there. DeForest Buckner, probably, in my opinion, one of the most underrated IDP players in the NFL. He's getting a little. People are coming around to him a little bit more though. Finally, listen to these numbers: 73, 61, 67, 62. Those are his combined tackles. That's consistency right there. Quarterback hits. He basically pushes up into the teens every year. He's had 20 and 22 years. He had 14 last year. He came down a little bit, but he still had his second most sacks of his career last year, which was set 7.5. So to go now and play with Justin Houston on that line, and Justin Houston's a guy that I was also very big on last year, and he was one of my sleepers. People were just, guys hit 28, 29, 30, and everyone's like, oh, they suck. And it's like, that's not really how it goes. It can feel like that, but it's a bias. You have to look past that. But DeForest Buckner moving there, I think you can just pencil him in again for another 60 tackle year, 2 or 3 pass deflections, 7, 8 sacks. And now that they have a more competent quarterback there, he might be in a situation where he can rush the passer a little bit more. And he's so versatile. He can move inside, outside. And then, of course, like I said, we have Justin Houston, ex-Chief guy I really like there as well on that defensive line. Both these guys are, quality pieces. Like I said, this is an IDP-rich division. What are your thoughts about the move for Buckner, and how much do you think this helps Justin Houston in his ability to get to the quarterback?
So I'm with you. Love the fact that I think it helps both players. I think Justin Houston, let's be real, 3 years ago was one of the best players in the league. I mean, when he was with Kansas City, what do you have? 20 and a half, 20 tackles, 21, 22 sacks in one season, which was crazy to me. And then you add a guy who's consistent as DeForest Buckner, who was a little surprised they moved on from, but again, it was contract time and, he was a first round draft pick. They got a first round draft pick for him. They got a guy who's probably going to be very serviceable, at San Francisco. But Houston is so good. I think it makes both of them a lot better. I actually think it helps Houston more than it helps DeForest Buckner, though, because nobody was really there to push the line. You could focus on Justin Houston, who still had a really solid year last year. But you bring in DeForest Buckner, you got a guy they have to focus on. You got to – honestly, my favorite addition to the group, which helps those two out, is Xavier Rhodes. Now, Xavier Rhodes 2 years ago was one of the best corners in the league, if not the best corner in the league. If you really look at the stats and his coverage ability, the percentage thrown to him was under 50%, which is amazing in the NFL. And then you have Rock Ya-Sin, who's we've already said is really solid. Kari Willis, love him in the back. I mean, he had 70-some tackles last year, which is crazy. Solo-wise, and then like you're seeing guys just really come up. Walker's played really well. Darius Leonard obviously is the consensus number one linebacker. I think Houston has a monster year because of DeForest Buckner and adding Xavier Rhodes, which is why it's so hard for me to trade him in a lot of leagues. I've had some offers. He's a guy that I think in a dynasty league, I can understand you trading him. I think, he might have 2-3 more years, because he was ravaged with injuries earlier. But, man, he played a whole season last year. So, he has a niche right now. He loves where he's at. I like it, man. I don't love where they're at on the other side, but I think, honestly, this team is stacked if you really look at it with Walker, Leonard, Rhodes, Sin, Kari Willis, Buckner.
Yeah.
I mean, Okereke, who's a rookie from last year. Watch out, man. And something else that they added and people aren't talking about, and watch out, Malik Hooker, your days are numbered, is Julian Blackmon. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, Malik Hooker's days are numbered.
I like it. Tell him. I think if I look at some stuff here on Justin Houston, it's interesting. We were just talking about pass deflections, saying I like guys that get you a little bit extra. I'm always looking for that. It's funny. Every year of Justin Houston's career, he's had multiple at least one pass deflection, in Kansas City. But he did play that outside linebacker position and the 3-4, which they make you drop into coverage more. He plays 1 year as a defensive end with Indiana, with the Indianapolis Colts. And he has his first year with 0 pass deflections. But he did reach 11 sacks. He hasn't broken double-digit sacks since 2014. So, it's a give and take. But I think DeForest getting there, I think both those guys are going to be great options. I've got them both in my top 20 going into the season. Let's get to the kingpin himself. Let's talk about Darius Leonard. Only played 13 games this last year. Still had 121 tackles, 6 quarterback hits as a middle linebacker, 5 sacks as a middle linebacker. Woo, that's scary. 13 games, 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. I don't think we have the interceptions up here on this graphic, but the man also had 5 interceptions last year, again, in 13 games. He is the consensus number one linebacker because he is the best, most versatile defensive player in the NFL. I mean, it's him, or in my opinion, as far as just being the best all-around defensive player, or Jamal Adams. And they have similar games. They can get up on the line, they can play the middle, they can play coverage, and wherever they're at, they can beat whoever they're on 9 times out of 10. They're cornerstone defensive pieces, and Darius Leonard, might go down as one of the best linebackers of all time if he can stay healthy. Because, I mean, every time he's on the field, he's just a walking big play. So what do you think about, we know he's good. We know he's great. Give us a little bit of commentary on him, but tell us a little bit about these other guys that are, on either side of him, Bobby Okereke and Anthony Walker, both who I think will end up being serviceable this year.
Well, Walker was serviceable last year, but a lot of it was because early in the season, Darius Leonard was out with a concussion for 3 weeks. So I think that's why Walker was so serviceable last year. He's consistent. He's clutch. I mean, this play shows it enough. I mean, inside the 50, my man comes up with an interception. And honestly, probably could have ran the football back, and he stops. And dude, but I'm with you. I like Okereke. Okereke got a lot of hate for some misstrued stuff at Stanford. Like I said, he's from Stanford. He's a really smart guy, really solid. I like how players are known or become players because someone went and watched them at the Senior Bowl. And Darius Leonard is that guy. Their GM will tell you they fell in love with Darius Leonard at the Senior Bowl, which is why he was drafted, where he was. And let's be real, in the fantasy land, Darius Leonard's the number one guy to grab. I legit watched Darius Leonard go in the first pick in the second round in a dynasty league. It's a real thing.
I mean, he's a league.
So it is a league.
Yeah, I mean, he's the CMC of linebackers. I mean, he is the, Michael Thomas of linebackers. I mean, he is the Patrick Mahomes of linebackers. I mean, there's guys that can go stride for stride with him for a little while in the season, but eventually he just pulls away, and he's the best. I mean, and we've seen it 2 years in a row now, once where he's been hurt a little bit, once where he's just been an absolute monster. I mean, I went back and looked at the point differential of his rookie year between him and the linebacker 2 in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. And it was like 70 points difference. I mean, it was like looking at CMC versus Aaron Jones this year. I mean, it was like the gap between 1 and 2 is it's a chasm. So he's an elite guy. I don't blame anybody for reaching for him, especially in Dynasty, because he's just going to give you an advantage because of the ways that he can be successful compared to a bread and butter tackler who he can do that. And then he's also just going to crush in all the extras. So, and I'm with you too. I think Okereke and Walker both are going to be serviceable, but I don't think they'll ever be able to really shine into, a top 12 kind of role with, an absolute beast like Leonard there. Quickly, I want to touch on, you brought up Khari Willis for a second. He was a guy that somebody asked. I was in a trade question on Twitter the other day, and it was essentially came down to, would you trade a 2022? So this is a pick that is not going to actually produce any points for your team for about 850, 900 days as a rookie, a fourth rounder for Khari Willis. And there were several guys on there who were saying, no, they wouldn't do it. They'd rather keep the pick. I was one of the few people that said I would do it. Khari Willis in 9 games started had 71 tackles this last year. That number can go up, and that number will go up this year. To get a guy that's floor 71 tackles for a 4th-round pick that is not going to put any points on your team for, again, almost 900 days at best. That player that you draft in the 4th in 2022 has to actually get a starting job to get you any points. I would 100%, 100 times out of 100, trade that pick for Khari Willis, a guy that I can drop into my defensive back 2 spot every week, probably for the next 2 years. So I think there's a little bit of hesitation with Khari Willis because we don't have enough data points to feel comfortable to have an opinion about him that would suggest that he's better than a pick. But Khari Willis is going to be a beast. I mean, he's 24 years old, 9 games started. Like you said, Malik Hooker experiment is pretty much over with. I think Khari Willis is going to be a beast for IDP fantasy this next year. I can easily see him breaking into that 85 tackle range. And he's on a team that has a lot of disruptors on it. Justin Houston, Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner. So if anybody's trying to, rain on Khari Willis's parade, it's not us. So we're telling you guys Khari Willis is going to be a very useful producer for your fantasy team, a lot more useful than a 4th-round pick from 2022. So go get Khari Willis. Let's go ahead and move on out of this team. Let's head to the Titans. We're about 30 minutes in. Tennessee Titans. Now, this is a team that is not a big brand name team right now. I mean, they kind of came on strong last year, but they have a lot of really sneaky kind of IDP players on this team. And let's just kind of start with some of their sneakier guys at linebacker, in my opinion. I think Jerrod Landry and Rashad Evans are not getting enough love. Everybody wants to talk about Jayon Brown. We know Jayon Brown's good. We've seen it. Like, he's been great. But last year, Jayon Brown, the difference between Jayon Brown and the difference between Rashad Evans last season was not as big as I think a lot of people think it was. Rashad Evans had 239 points last year in IDP 1-2-3 scoring, which was more than Jayon Brown. Jayon Brown had 232. But everywhere I look, people are saying draft Jayon Brown. He's the guy you want. He's the guy you should be taking first. He's the guy that's worth it. And I think that's just
a lot of it's because of the injury.
Yeah,
I mean,
little bit of it. I mean,
the year before that, I mean, IDP 1-2-3 scoring, Jayon Brown was 300 points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was the top guy. But, I mean, Jayon Brown only missed 2 games. I mean, it wasn't that big of an injury. I mean, it's not like he was dead and gone. I mean,
he missed 2 games, but he left 2 games early.
You're right. You're right. I just want to point out, we know Jayon Brown's good. Everybody's going to tell you Jayon Brown's good. I want you to know that Rashad Evans is a good IDP asset. And I want you to know that you can play him confidently as a linebacker too, and you're going to be able to draft him as a linebacker 3 or a 4. And he's going to keep up.
Okay, so I'm going to – we talked about how good the Titans were defensively last year, right? They're going to be better this year. I'm ready for this, right? I need you to sit back a little bit on me.
I'm ready.
Okay, Jeffrey Simmons.
I got my helmet on.
Right, rookie last year. Once he came in, I mean, his first game he blew up, had a tackle for loss, and forced fumble like instantly. Okay, so Jeffrey Simmons, young kid, solid, comes back. A big move by then. People love and hate this guy, Vic Beasley. Honestly, loved him at right outside linebacker. I think he's in a good position there. I think it's the right move for them. So they helped their defensive line by Jeffrey Simmons going to be healthy finally because he's already a monster. That dude is scary looking. Jerrod Landry, at the left outside linebacker. We already talked about we love Jerrod Landry. I mean, we both are big high on him. Yeah. Jayon Brown, Rashad Evans in the middle. I like Jack Crawford. As much as anybody. I don't like Daquan Jones as much. I think that I don't like him as much as Simmons, I'll tell you that. I think Jeffrey Simmons is climbing a lot of boards in the aspect that people just don't know him. And if you want to check out my rookie IDP 4-1 on him last year, I was really high. I mean, I put him in my top 25 knowing he had an ACL injury coming, going to the combine. But that's how high I'm on this kid. I mean, he could really make a move this year, and I don't know. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of the guy. So, yeah, Jeffrey Simmons. So,
he's actually that article I was telling you about. He's gonna in my part 2. That will be up on Dynasty Nerds hopefully by the end of this week. Jeffrey Simmons was the last player I highlighted. I'm with you there. He's gonna be an elite. Not an elite. He could be an elite, though. I mean, he had like 30-something tackles in 9 games. So, I mean, for a D tackle to just even to get into that 30 range is generally a good sign, especially for a rookie. But to do it in 9 games, he's got some skills. But I want to circle back real quick to Rashad Evans just to continue my little banter. He doesn't do a lot in coverage, 0 pass deflections last year. Okay, that's not great. But he did have 9 tackles for loss, 8 quarterback hits, 2.5 sacks. And there was something that came out yesterday that said that they're talking about using him to rush the passer a little bit more. So now that we're hearing that, and you said they got Vic Beasley there and Jerrod Landry, these are all 3 guys. Well, I'm not really high on Vic Beasley, but, Rashad Evans and Jerrod Landry are 2 guys besides Jayon Brown that I think they're going to score close to whatever Jayon Brown scores. I mean, again, even this year, they were pretty dang close. Jerrod Landry had 225. Rashad Evans had 239, and Jayon Brown had 232. So they were all within 20 points of each other. And the only guy you're probably going to hear people really talking up is Jayon Brown, and that's a mistake. So, if you can't get Jayon Brown, don't be scared to get one of these other guys on your team a little bit later. They're going to be productive. Let's talk about their safeties. Kenny Vaccaro, he's kind of to me, he's kind of just a bleh defensive back. I know he's one of the better.
I don't think he's anything what people expect him to be coming out of college. Personally.
Yeah, that's kind of what he's had 100 tackle season, but since then, it's been pretty pedestrian. Actually, this last year was his best season since then. He had 84 combined tackles, which wasn't bad. But no, only 3 tackles for loss, only 5 pass deflections, no forced fumbles in 2 years. He's just a guy to me. As far as IDP, he's in that same category for me as a Minkah Fitzpatrick, as a Ronnie Harrison kind of guy. Like, I think they're solid quality twos, but I'm really not banking on them to push into that one category like I would a guy like John Johnson or, like Budda Baker, who, these guys are really solidified themselves as tackling machines. But what are your thoughts on Vaccaro going into?
Not huge on Vaccaro, obviously. I like Kevin Beard. I think he's really solid. I think that he's consistent, which is, he's a floor guy for me, and that's why I like Kevin Beard. I think he's, got a solid floor. I think he's somebody that you can depend on in that aspect. But who's the one player? Like, give me a player that nobody's talking about and might not even be a starter for you on the Titans, but you think that could have a big year. For you, I think it's Rashad Evans, but yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm just circling back to Rashad Evans. I said something the other day. I've just been thinking about it a lot. He just nobody wants to talk about him. Nobody wants to talk him up. And even last year when he was doing well, it was like, well, he's just Rashad Evans. He's just putting points on your fantasy team. Isn't that what you want? And he's doing, maybe it's not the way that, you can stat it out. Maybe your spreadsheet didn't have him down for all that nonsense, but he's a good player. And if Woodward, somebody said Mike Waller commented on something I said yesterday. If Woodward or whatever his name was, the older dude, who I'm talking about, Woodyard. That's it, Woodyard. If he wouldn't have been there his rookie year, this guy probably would have popped off sooner. And I'm inclined to agree with him. If you get on PFF too, which I don't spend a lot of time over there because it's kind of a overload, but he was top 10 graded as a pass rusher for a middle linebacker. So, he's got skill sets that other linebackers not necessarily don't have. Like I said, his pass deflections aren't great, but we can make up with that in other spots. So, Titans got some good.
Okay, I'm going to give you somebody that you're going to have to – and you're in a 52-team league, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or 52-player league, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm going to give you somebody to look at, and you need to really think about this. He's also on the team. David Long Jr. from West Virginia. He didn't play hardly at all last year. Barely at all. Coming off an injury from West Virginia. He's a lot like Jayon Brown, twitchy, 5'11", 230-pound guy. He had 2 tackles for loss, 9 solos last year, and didn't have a single start as a rookie. But I'm telling you right now, he's so twitchy. Watch out. This dude could seriously make a roll to jump in and play some ball. He had 169 tackles at West Virginia, 169 solo tackles at West Virginia, 246 total tackles. He had 39.5 tackles for loss in college.
Damn.
He had 12.5 sacks in college at linebacker. So I'm telling you, watch out for him. He's a deep stash type of kid, but he's somebody that I'm keeping an eye on for sure in his second year.
Nice. Great sleeper pick there. I like that a lot. And he's definitely a guy that is on my radar now. All right. We know Logan Ryan didn't re-sign. We're not really sure what's going on with him there. So I feel like
he went to the Jets.
Oh, did he? When did I miss that? How did I miss that? I thought he was a free.
This is 2 weeks in a row we've had this conversation.
Oh my gosh. I'm so stupid. All right. Well, there you go. Logan Ryan's on the Jets now. Let's move on to the Texans, shall we? Let's wrap this bad boy up. Now, this is a team that has some pretty good guys. They're a little top heavy, you know. You're going to have J.J. Watt, who is coming back off of another year with an injury, but he's still J.J. Watt. And he still had, 21 quarterback hits in the 10 games. What did he play? 10 games last season, I believe. 8 games played. 3 pass deflections. That's something, again, J.J. Watt's always been good at, is getting you those extras. He does get pass deflections. He'll bat some balls down. 4 tackles for loss, 2 fumble recoveries last year in 8 games. Only 4 sacks, but again, he did have 21 quarterback hits, and he had a very high number of quarterback pressures, too, in just those 8 games. I think he was up into the 50s already. You'll have to double-check me on that, guys. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was up into the 50s just in those 8 games on pressures. Coming back this year, I have him firmly in my defensive or DL1s. I mean, I have him at number 5 right behind Nick Bosa going into this year, just because, when he's healthy, and he claims to be healthy, I mean, J.J. Watt is the cream of the crop. He's probably not number 1, just because there is that risk in the back of your mind that maybe he does go down again and you only get him for a half a season. But even if you just do him for half a season, the half season is going to be very productive for you. He'll probably help get you to the playoffs, which is what we all want at the end of the day. Just get me to the playoffs and let my guys do what they got to do. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, I'll be pretty bummed about it. What are you expecting from J.J. Watt coming into this season, though, Jerrod? I mean, do you think he's going to break 2 sacks?
Do I think he breaks 10 sacks?
Yes.
Are we saying he stays healthy?
Yes. I'll say he stays healthy. 10 sacks.
Then yeah, 100%.
All right, good. I'm with you there.
If J.J. Watt stays healthy, he's without a doubt a top 5 guy.
Breach.
That's the problem with him, though. How many – and I don't feel like I'm reaching at all with J.J. Watt. Just like T.J. Watt. I mean – we both love T.J. Watt. He's my favorite Watt brother in the aspect that, he stays healthy. My biggest thing is, will he stay healthy? Will J.J. Watt stay healthy? Because, dude, he's had a year. I mean, you look at a couple back in it, and I'll have to, my buddy Brandon, you guys know him. He's really big on throwing me stats every now and then. And Steve's going to have That's ridiculous, dude. Yeah. Ridiculous. That's 50 points. So, and if he's a point per league guy and some, IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, he's a point. That's a point. That's 50 points. That's 50 points. That's something that I can tell you people are really high on, and he's climbing charts right now because JJ is always hurt, is Charles Omenihu. I don't like giving these guys love. I'm from Oklahoma. You guys understand this, right? But I'm going to give the third Texas guy love in a week. Charles Omenihu is climbing charts. In a rookie season, playing very small snap count last year, had a quiet, pretty good year. They drafted Ross Blaylock and another guy who I'm not even about to butcher his name. So I'm going to just call him Double A. You guys will check that out. But I will not butcher that guy's name. So watch out for Charles Omenihu. Watch out for Ross Blacklock moving in, because I think Vander does. I think he probably takes his spot eventually, sooner than later if he actually gets a camp in. Whitney Merciless is solid at linebacker, as a rush linebacker. Zack Cunningham is a stud. But Art McKinney had a quiet, good year last year. But when we buckle all down, J.J. Watt, do I think he gets 50 quarterback hits again? Dude, that's a crazy number. He needed it twice. I'm going to go with 35.
Yeah, I think 35 is a very reasonable number for him, and I think that's a good goal for him. And if he hit that number, 35, I mean, that would put him into the top 10 for sure, probably at DL, just based on that fact alone. You have to imagine he's converting a good number of those into sacks. Let's talk about Zack Cunningham, who you brought up a second ago. Cunningham, 142 tackles, 99 solos. I believe he led the AFC in tackles this last year. He's a guy that when I hear people talking about their linebackers and their rankings, and even myself, he's just doesn't get the amount of love he gets is not proportionate with what he actually does for your fantasy team. I was looking at my rankings for redraft, and I had him at 16 or 17, and I was looking, and I had Fred Warner at 12, and I was just like, man, like it feels like blasphemy to have Fred Warner ahead of Zack Cunningham. Just when you really, really think about it. And I see Steve here in the background. If you guys can see Steve, he's going nuts over here. I think he agrees with me. So I had to make a little shift. I moved Zack Cunningham up to 13. I still have Fred Warner at 12, but I'm just going to be completely honest. Fred Warner's probably going to be behind Zack Cunningham by the time mid-July comes around, and when I really dig into it again, just because Fred Warner is a good player. We had a couple of really big games, like monster games in the middle of the season that really kind of helped inflate his overall score. Zack Cunningham, I'm not huge on bread and butter tackler guys, but he does a little bit of the other stuff that I like, and he's a big tackle guy. So Zack Cunningham needs a little bit more love, y'all. Starting, right here, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody but myself. So I moved him up my rankings a little bit, and I think that he's, I think that what we saw last year is going to be close to what he can do every year. Like you said, Bernard McKinney was definitely serviceable and useful for them, and was a good teammate for him to have on the field. But it seems like that defense is kind of transitioning to being Zack Cunningham's defense. So.
I like it. Like I said, Zack Cunningham's a solid guy. But I'll be, I'm going to throw shade back to you and off subject. Fred Warner's going to be a top 10 linebacker this year, and I'm willing to bet on it.
Ooh, yeah, top 10, eh? You know what to say. I'll have to consult my magic 8-ball before I start throwing money around. But I do love me some Freddie Prince Warner just as much as the next guy. I mean, that's the fun thing. I mean, these two guys, we're talking about them, and Jayon Brown, who we just talked about a minute ago. I mean, these are kind of the up-and-comers who are going to be probably guys that we're talking about the next 3 to 5 years as, top 10, top 15 linebackers. So we do need to get used to saying their names, and we do need to consider, long-term and short-term value. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, it's very close. Like I said, I have them both back-to-back, but there's just a couple other guys that I think will just do a little bit more than Fred Warner. Again, I have a little hesitancy because he did have that 1 or 2 games in the middle of the season where he had like a random sack or two just out of nowhere, really boosted his score up. But as an overall player, I mean, Fred Warner has definitely shown himself to be one of the better linebackers in the league. He's fast, too. I mean, his sideline-to-sideline speed is kind of shocking. So, reminds me a little bit of Devin Bush. But do we want to talk about their safeties? I mean, Justin Reed, he still had like 70-ish tackles, I believe, last year while he was busted up. He was hurt all season, guys. I mean, he got hurt in that first or second game, and he just did not come through the way we thought he would. He still was okay. You could play him certain weeks, and I did, but he did not. I thought he was going to push into the top 15 defensive backs last year, but hit bum shoulder. I forget what game it was. It was the first game or the second game of the year. He hit somebody. I think it was Leonard Fournette, and it just did not work out well for him. So
you want to talk about a team that has a ton of safeties on their team. I think they have 7 safeties on their roster right now. And I like Eric Murray, who just came over there. But there's so much talk about them signing Eric Reed, and having the Reed brothers. I mean, especially with everything that's going on, a lot of people believe that they're already the closest team to get Eric Reed, and with everything going on in the world, it would be a good sign for them personally. And I would love to see it. I think fantasy football players would like to see Eric Reed because, I mean, he blew up last year tackle-wise. I don't think he's going to be super expensive. And I think Justin and him together would be really solid. That would be fun to watch. As much as I like Eric Murray coming over from Cleveland, I just see Justin Reed sitting right next to his brother by the end of the season, if not beginning of the season, if we see everything happening. So that's my only things about them. You want to talk about a team that's kind of set on their age group, and it might be their coach. He likes veteran players, man. I mean, there's not a rookie player that they're like, oh, well, he's going to be the guy. Now I think Ross Blacklock moves in there and drops Eddie Vander does, and he's gone. But I think Ross Black, in general, he likes older, experienced players. But his days are number two, as a head coach after the worst trade in NFL history.
Yeah, that was
I'm sorry. I can't get over that. There's fantasy drafts. There's no way that would happen, bro.
Yeah, there's no way. You're right. And that should tell you everything you need to know right there. So, but anyway, I think that covers we covered the front and the back and the middle of each of these teams for the AFC South. Hopefully the IDP Army, got some good information out of this. Let's bring old man Steve back in here, shall we? What up, Steve?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. How you doing? How'd we do?
Oh, you did great. Yeah, I think Zack Cunningham is going to get a lot more tackles this year. I think they're going to be that defense is going to be on the field a lot more this year. I mean, well, he's got Brandon Cooks, Watson's got Brandon Cooks and old broken man Fuller to throw to this year, right?
Yeah, Fuller, Stills, and Cooks.
Mm-hmm.
All fast busted.
Yep. It doesn't look good for him.
Nice.
They got David Johnson.
Okay, there we go. He's gonna be there.
Bro, I'm telling you, David Johnson, dude,
man.
If he's gonna get the ball.
He's got a chance to prove it again.
He's gonna tote the rock. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Yeah.
What was Carlos Hyde had his first 1,000
yards per carry this last season is like 3.9 or something like that.
I mean, it wasn't great, but he's going to a better offensive line. And Carlos Hyde had his first 1,000-yard season of his career last year in Houston. So I think people need to.
And he's trash.
I don't think Carlos Hyde's trash necessarily. I think he's been. He's ended up in a lot of bad situations.
He's on his 16th.
Yeah, and each one of those teams has been bad while he's been there. He was on the Niners.
And every single one
he was on the Browns when they were bad. He was on the Jags when they were bad.
He was a bad situation for
Carlos. He was on the team for like a couple of weeks.
He needed that golden opportunity to make it a good season, huh?
I'm just saying, Carlos Hyde needs to get a little more love than he gets. Okay. Hey,
I'm sure he gets plenty of love at home, homie.
Steelers, I bet he'll be pretty good. I bet people will start liking him.
No. Ain't no way taking Connor's spot.
Yeah, they probably like
targets. Woo-wee. Suddenly Carlos Hyde's cool.
and I still don't understand how you didn't have Devin White in your top 12.
I don't have I mean
you said that's
I just
great.
There's just Levante David, man, he's not gone. Levante David's still the guy there. I mean, he should be in the top 10, top 12 before Devin White, especially in redraft. Devin White's got a lot to prove to me still. He made a lot of his points on big plays last year. He only had like 90-some on tackles. Sure, he only played 13 games, which is good, but he still hasn't done it. And I trust,
he really only played 11 games.
Yeah. And I mean, people be like, well, you have Devin White in your top 10. Yeah, or Devin Bush. But I'm like, yeah, but Devin Bush played all 16. I think Devin Bush was he's the unquestioned starter now. And I don't think he's going to get rotated in and out this year because, they just don't have that option because of some of the moves they've made. So I think Bush over White this year. And I think Bush is –
You still got that flame, don't you?
Hey, you're riling me up. I got
it. Well, I had to.
I know. All right. Well, that's all I got. We're doing AFC East or West next week. I'm not sure, guys. You'll find out when you tune in. We'll let you know. No news, no updates for me. It's just
should have a guest next week too.
Yeah, hopefully. Knock on wood. We're supposed to have a guest today, guys, or yesterday things just didn't work out. So hopefully that is not the situation this next week. Mm-hmm. And that's all I got. I'm ready to close it out. IDP Army, appreciate you, love you. Follow, subscribe, leave us a review on iTunes, follow us on Twitter, yada 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 yada. You know what to do. So
always until next week. Let's go.